In the midst of New York City's noisy rush, where hurried footsteps echo along sidewalks, and hearts are often too busy to truly feel, lives Leah, a young woman with a quiet beauty. The kind that doesn't need many words to leave a lasting impression. She works as an editor at a small, charming bookstore in Brooklyn, where the shelves hold stories of other loves, other lives, and a few pieces of her own heart. Leah is dedicated, soft-spoken, and kind. She lives among manuscripts and cups of tea, between pages and longings. Her mornings begin early, always with the same white porcelain mug, where chamomile tea releases its lazy steam into the chilly air. She arrives before anyone else, gently, opens the shop's windows and lets in the city's breeze. Mixed with the scent of old paper, she organizes books as if each one were a treasure. On her desk lie marked-up manuscripts, forgotten notes between chapters, and unfinished love stories waiting for sweeter endings. Leah edits words with the same tenderness someone might use to write a love letter. She fixes commas as if smoothing the hair of someone dear. She sighs at farewells, smiles when a sentence touches her deeply. Each day is filled with stories that aren't hers, yet somehow reflect pieces of her own heart. On the outside, everything seems in place, but inside, there's an emptiness shaped by memories still living between the lines of the books she edits. An old love quietly tucked away, an absence time couldn't erase, and the lingering hope that one day some chapter of life might still carry her name. Leah is dedicated, soft-spoken, and kind. She lives among manuscripts and cups of tea, between pages and longings. On the outside, everything seems in place, but inside, there's a space filled with echoes of what once was. Still, Leah doesn't give up. Despite the longing, she believes in love. The kind that arrives gently, understands silence and honors time. She waits with her heart open for someone who will find her without rushing, someone who doesn't have to be perfect, just true. And while he hasn't come yet, she keeps living among books and soft lights, between pages and dreams, between the present moment and whatever is yet to bloom. Because Leah knows the best love stories are never written in a hurry. They unfold slowly, like the gentle turning of a page. While Leah followed her quiet routine among books and memories, somewhere else in Brooklyn, someone else was also learning how to begin again. His name was Ethan, an architect by calling, an artist by nature. He had the kind of gaze that sees beauty in unfinished structures and believes every space can be rebuilt, with tenderness and patience. Ethan had left Chicago just a few weeks earlier, carrying only a suitcase, a wrinkled floor plan, and a heart. Still healing from a recent goodbye. New York wasn't part of his original plan. It was a leap into the unknown, a quiet invitation from fate. He landed a small project, the renovation of an old townhouse in Brooklyn, soon to become a cafe bookstore. A place where walls would tell stories, and architecture would serve not only to hold up ceilings, but to hold memories. In those first days, he walked the streets like someone still finding his place. But soon, he let himself fall into the rhythm of the city. He carried his sketchbook everywhere, often stopping in parks just to draw windows. He loved to observe people, their gestures, their silences, the hurried paths they walked. Ethan had strong hands and gentle movements. He designed from the heart. He imagined sunlight pouring through stained glass, quiet corners that could become safe havens, benches by the window where someone, maybe someone like him, could simply sit and be. Sometimes, in the middle of sketches and measurements, he found himself dreaming of building something more than walls and beams. He wanted to design places where love could bloom, where meetings happened without warning, where new beginnings smelled like fresh coffee and sounded like pages turning. He still carried his own share of longing, but he didn't want to live among the ruins of what never came to be. And without knowing it, he was about to meet someone who also lived among stories and quietly hoped for the very same thing, a love that was calm and true, the kind that arrives slowly, as if it didn't want to interrupt. Leah's routine was made of small rituals. The same bookstore, the same cup of tea, the same bench on the subway. Every morning she took the orange line toward Brooklyn. The city blurred past her window like a story told far too fast. And in the middle of that rushing sea of people, Leah began to notice a curious detail. A man, always on the same spot on the platform, always at the same time, always with that same faraway gaze, the kind of look that seemed more inside his thoughts than out. In the world, he didn't appear to notice anything around him, but Leah saw him, with the same regularity as her tea, with the same softness as turning a page. It was impossible not to notice. He was tall, with defined features, yet something gentle lingered in his tired eyes. An architecture book always rested in his hands, sometimes with folded pages, other times with pencil marks scribbled in the margins, as if he were trying to understand not just buildings, but the stories hidden within them. Leah didn't know his name. She'd never heard his voice. But day after day, she found herself waiting for that fleeting moment when she'd see him, even if only for a few minutes between the train's arrival and the crowd that would soon separate them. Sometimes she imagined where he came from. Maybe he was an architect, restoring old places. Maybe he liked sketching quiet spaces, or maybe he too was trying to rebuild his life, piece by piece. Leah never dared to smile, but her heart beat a little differently when he was near, as if the city paused for a second, as if the two of them belonged to the same unwritten chapter. And on that rainy Wednesday morning, when people huddled beneath umbrellas and the trains ran late, their eyes truly met for the first time, just for a moment, long enough to stir something, soft enough to leave a trace. He lifted his gaze and, unhurried, looked right at her. Leah felt a gentle chill flutter in her chest, and as the train pulled in, everything scattered once more. But that day, between the hum of the rails and the scent of rain, something shifted. What had once been just a passing observation became a presence she began to anticipate, and Leah, not knowing why, held on to that moment, like someone keeping a letter with no return address, hoping that one day it might be opened again. Ethan wasn't the kind to pay attention to faces on the subway. The city moved too fast, too loud, and he always preferred to lose himself in quiet, in his sketches, in the mental outlines of projects that slowly took shape inside his mind. But there was something, or rather someone, he began to notice. Every afternoon he took the same 6 p.m. train. That was when he'd leave the construction site or ongoing renovation and head back to his small apartment, still smelling of fresh paint and second chances. 3 minutes before the train arrived, she would appear, red coat, headphones in, a calm posture, almost distant, like someone walking through her own world, and always with a book in hand, sometimes open, sometimes simply held close to her chest. She never looked directly at anyone. But Ethan saw her, at first, like someone registering a familiar detail, a red dot in a sea of grey. Later, like someone unconsciously waiting for that brief, daily, silent presence. He didn't know her name, he didn't know her story, but something about her stirred something in him, a different kind of calm, a quiet nostalgia, like an old photograph forgotten between the pages of a book. When the train approached, their eyes would sometimes meet for just a moment. Ethan told himself it was coincidence, but deep down he hoped it would happen. Those eyes, dark, wide and deep, held a kind of melancholy that seemed to speak to his own. It was strange. They had never exchanged a word, but in a world where everything was spoken too fast, where conversations came crowded with noise and distraction, the silence between them seemed to say more than any rehearsed phrase ever could. She entered car 2, he car 4. So they never saw where the other's journey ended. But that night, Ethan carried more than just blueprints and sketches of a new project. He carried a quiet, timid, but very real desire. The desire to know her name. And for the first time, he wondered if maybe some structures weren't made of bricks and concrete, but of chance encounters, steady glances, and hearts that, though bruised, still believed in the chance to start again. On a cold, late afternoon, New York seemed to be dressed in white. The snow fell gently, as if covering the noise of haste with silence. Each snowflake was a small pause in time, and even the car horns sounded more timid that day. Leah was at the station as always, red coat, headphones in her ears, but she wasn't listening to music. She was just there waiting, for more than a train perhaps. That's when the announcement echoed, muffled by the speakers and the snow. Next 6 1 p.m. train to Brooklyn delayed by 15 minutes. People huffed, complained, kept scrolling on their phones. But Leah just smiled, because in that moment he was there too, and for the first time, Ethan didn't look away. It wasn't a rehearsed gesture, nor a bold move. It was natural, like the silent blooming of a flower. Ethan walked toward her, still holding the book. His heart, the one he usually ignored, beat differently, as if grateful for the delay. He stopped in front of Leah, a little shy, a little mesmerized. She took off her headphones, and then came the first exchange. Soft, like the snow around them. Ethan, I guess today the train decided we need to talk. Leah, with a smile that lit up the station. Or maybe it just wanted to delay destiny. They both laughed without knowing exactly why. It was a light, shared laugh, as if they had met before, in some book, or maybe in a dream. And then they started talking about books, about old buildings, about unnamed longings. Leah spoke of the scent of old paper, how she edited stories and searched for lost pieces of herself. Ethan told her about the restoration of a 100-year-old library, about his love for structures that withstand time, even when they're cracked. Both had lost something recently, and they carried that loss like one carries a folded umbrella, invisible but always within reach, in case the sky collapses. But there, in that moment, the whole city seemed to pause just for them. The sound of the subway no longer mattered. The crowd, the announcements, the cold, all faded to the background, because there was warmth in their dialogue. There was silence between the words, and a kind of sweetness you can't buy nor rush. When the train finally arrived 15 minutes later, they lingered for a few more seconds. The door opened. Ethan looked at her. Leah looked at him, and they stepped in together. That night, after the train delay and the conversation that didn't want to end, Leah and Ethan got off at the same station. They discovered between laughter and slow steps that they lived just a few blocks apart. The universe, it seemed, had long-standing plans for the two of them. 2 days later, between shy messages and glances, now purposefully exchanged on the platform, Ethan gathered his courage. He waited for her with a note tucked inside an architecture book. She arrived, red coat, headphones around her neck, a smile in her eyes. And accepted the book as if she already knew it held a secret. She opened it, a simple card, handwritten, Leah. I still don't know much about words, but I understand desire, and I want to hear you more often. Would you have dinner with me tomorrow? Ethan. She didn't answer right away. She just looked at him and smiled, that serene smile she always carried. But this time there was a new sparkle in her eyes, like someone who finally finds a forgotten line in the middle of their own book. Next night, they went to a small and cozy restaurant in the West Village. The lights were low, the music soft, and the smell of freshly baked bread seemed to embrace everyone who entered. They talked like old friends, laughed like teenagers, and looked at each other like people who had finally stopped running from themselves. Leah spoke about her mother, the letters she keeps in tea boxes, and the poems she's never published. Ethan talked about his childhood in the countryside, the first house he sketched in a math notebook, and his recent fear of starting over. They listened to each other patiently, like people discovering treasures in the smallest details, and when the waiter brought dessert, 2 coffees and 1 slice of pie shared in silence, Ethan found courage once more. Ethan: "You know what I like most about old buildings?" Leah: "What?" Ethan: "They don't try to hide their marks. They don't cover up the years or the cracks. They still stand with everything they've been through. I think I want that too." Leah stayed silent for a moment, the kind of silence that speaks louder than any answer. Then she placed her hand over his. Simple, natural, and right there, without needing to promise anything. They began a relationship built on calm certainties. It wasn't a movie love. It was better, a real love, of 2 tired hearts that chose to rest in each other. And New York, with all its rush and its lights, seemed to slow down just a little to let that love bloom between routine and tenderness. The days that followed were like autumn leaves, light, beautiful, and carrying that scent of newness that only freshly discovered love can bring. Leah and Ethan began to meet with the frequency of those who already missed each other before even saying goodbye. It wasn't something they said. It was something they felt, like the wind that slips through the window uninvited, but which you never want to close. He started waiting for her outside the bookstore, a cup of tea in his hands. Leah, always on time, would come out with the pages still fresh in her mind, talking about the chapter she was editing, or the poetry hidden in a forgotten paragraph. Ethan listened with the wonder of someone reading a rare book, with his eyes and with his soul. She began to visit him at his projects. Sometimes she'd find him in an old mansion being restored. Other times, in a library that smelled of aged wood and fresh paint. Ethan would proudly show her every detail of what he was working on, like someone revealing a new story to a person who already understands happy endings. It was a beautiful sight. Leah and her books, Ethan and his buildings, 2 worlds that seemed different but deep down spoke of the same things, memory and permanence. Their evenings together were filled with simple dinners, unfinished movies, and conversations that started with, "Did you know?" and ended with sleepy smiles on the couch. And there were silences too, but they were good silences, the kind between people who understand each other effortlessly, who know that not everything needs to be said to be deeply felt. One day, while folding a blanket on Ethan's couch, Leah found a note stuck inside an old notebook. It read, "I wanted to build a house inside someone, one with big windows, where light enters easily, and where my heart doesn't need to hide anymore." She recognized Ethan's handwriting and felt her heart beat with that quiet certainty that only comes when something beautiful happens without a single fuss. The following week, it was her turn to leave a note, tucked between the pages of the book he was reading. "I think I've found my place of rest, and it smells like you and sounds like your laugh." It was the kind of love that didn't need loud promises. It just needed to be there, present, being shelter for one another, because in the end, Leah and Ethan were no longer searching for a grand finale. They were building together a beginning that had no need to rush. And if life has stories we like to reread with affection, this would certainly be one of them. Winter was beginning to say goodbye to New York, making way for a shy spring. The dry branches were budding, and on the windows of the bookstore where Leah worked, the sun began to stretch again, slowly. She and Ethan were living one of those loves that seemed to walk with steady feet. They had their routines, their rituals of affection, their little traditions, like sharing dessert at the end of the week, or watching old movies with French subtitles just to laugh at each other's pronunciation. But, like every well-written story, a page turned. Ethan received an email. It was from a major architecture firm in Seoul, specializing in historical restorations. The project was challenging, innovative, and involved rebuilding old buildings in the cultural heart of South Korea. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, and a dilemma too, he told Leah over coffee in Soho. She arrived with her hair down and that red coat that felt like part of her story. Ethan was nervous. Not because of the offer, but because of her, Ethan, trying to smile. "They want me for a year, maybe more. The project is amazing, Leah. It's the kind of thing I've always dreamed of." Leah fell silent, the kind of silence that doesn't come from anger, but from the care behind what's about to be said. She knew how much it meant to him. She knew his talent. She knew how much courage it takes to leave. "Leah," softly, "and are you going to say yes?" Ethan, his eyes heavy. "I don't know. I thought about saying no, but I also thought about you, and how unfair it would be to carry regret beside you." Leah held her cup with both hands, as if it could somehow steady the moment that was slipping through her fingers. The love they shared wasn't small, but sometimes love alone isn't enough. In the days that followed, they saw each other less. Ethan dove into preparations, juggling deadlines, documents, and doubts. Leah tried to keep up with her routine, but the books seemed to lose their voice. The words shook on the page, as if even the stories felt the weight of what was coming. They still loved each other. But now, time was counting down. On the last night before the trip, Ethan took her to the Brooklyn Bridge. It was cold, the wind whispering between the city lights, and the two embraced in silence. "Ethan, I'm taking you with me, you know, in every sketch, in every window I open. You'll be there, Leah with a wistful smile, "and I'll stay here waiting for your letters or your silences." They kiss there, not like people saying goodbye forever, but like those who keep each other whole inside the heart. After that, Ethan left, and Leah stayed with her books, her teas, her pages, and her waiting. But something had changed. Now, the emptiness inside her had a name and an address in soul. They hadn't seen each other in weeks. Leah returned to the station, same time as always, more out of habit than hope. The clock was close to 6 p.m. when the train arrived, dragging its metallic breath across the tracks. She stared at the door. As it opened, body tense, heart racing, but he wasn't there. A shadow of disappointment fell over her, and she lowered her head, letting her hair hide the shimmer of restrained tears. But then a gentle tap on her shoulder made her flinch. She slowly looked up, and there he was, Ethan, the same shy smile, the same architecture book in his hands. But now he was holding a brand new subway ticket, fresh like a promise. He spoke, voice steady and full of feeling. "I turned soul down. I realized the right train isn't the one that takes you far away. It's the one that lets you stay close to the one who makes it all worthwhile." Leah felt time pause. The air seemed lighter, and warmth spread through her chest, as if finally she could breathe. With a trembling smile, almost a whisper, she replied, "Then, I think our time has finally come." And with those words, a world of hope and new beginnings opened before them, lighting up the quiet station with the promise that together they would find the way. Not based on where the train would go, but on where their hearts wanted to be. The sun shone gently that morning, illuminating every corner of the small chapel where Ethan and Leah had decided to unite their lives. Friends and family gathered, filling the air with smiles, tears, and heartfelt promises. The same architecture. Book rested on the altar table, now a symbol of building a shared dream. Leah walked in radiant, her heart beating fast, but full of certainty. Ethan waited for her, eyes shining, holding her hands with the tenderness of someone who never wants to let go. The vows were simple and true, filled with the kind of meaning only those who have waited and fought can understand, the commitment to be present, to choose each other every day, in every departure and every return. After the ceremony, under the blue sky of the city that never stops, they danced in the garden, surrounded by laughter and flowers, feeling the rhythm of the life that was truly beginning there. Ethan whispered in her ear, "It was worth waiting for the 6 p.m. train." Leah smiled, resting her head on his chest. In a city that never stops, two people learned that love sometimes just needs a delay and a gaze repeated enough to become destiny.